Welcome to Struggles of the Spirit. I'm your host, the Reverend Leland Udell. And it's a funny day today, as you all know. It's neither summer or winter or spring. The weather can't seem to make up its mind, but we all hear that it's going to get cooler on the weekend, and it'll get actually below freezing. But right now it's quite mild. And we have a man here today who's an expert about weather, I think. He's not a meteorologist or anything, but he's had to live with it in his profession for a number of years. He's had a variety of professions, and he's a man with a strong intellect and a lot of interest in various subjects and issues and professions. And Bob Fenix, and I'll introduce him to you in a little bit. I first want to remind you that this is public access. The television is designed the way we do it here for you to call in and for you to make comments, thoughts, suggestions, response to what you hear Bob talk about or what I have to say. And commercial television can't do that. As you well know, whatever is said on commercial television is, you have no chance to go on the air and make a comment. It's not designed that way, but our program is. So it's interactive, television. And the way you get onto our show is to phone in. At the bottom of your screen, the TV screen, you'll see a phone number to call to get to the studio here in Burlington. And you call that number, the phone will ring for Bill to answer it. He's the guy who runs the whole studio here, and he'll answer it, and you'll tell him what you want to do, and he'll plug you into our system so that your voice will be heard on the television, and Bob and I will have a chance to respond to what you have to say. So please participate. Don't be afraid. The television won't bite you, and your words don't have to be suitable for Encyclopedia Britannica or anything else. Just what you want to say is important for us to hear, and to hear your thoughts and your ideas. Now, if you're not here watching the television program at your home and watching us live today, the show is repeated several times during the week, and we have a disc that has a memory of the program, and you will hear the memory give you the program all over again, and you can't tell the original from the copy. However, we can't ask you to start the talk because we're not here to respond, but we can ask you to send us an email message as to what your thoughts and responses are. And the email address is also on the bottom of your TV screen where the email address is listed. And then you can get in touch with us by email and say what you want to say, and then we'll get back to you by a letter or a phone call or whatever means you would like, so that you can participate in that way and take part in what you hear today. So, welcome to Public Access, to Channel 15, to Struggles of the Spirit, and to an interesting hour with Bob Fenix. Bob has lived in these parts for a long time, and he's done a lot of living, and he's done a lot of things that some of us wish we might have done. He's done a variety of things, and he doesn't just stick in one job for the rest of his life. He's had a variety of things. So we are grateful that you will share with us, Bob, about those activities, and particularly today we're going to be talking with you about what it's like to be a farmer in Vermont. Very little is said anymore about being a farmer in Vermont, and why people want to become a farmer, how well they can make a decent living as a farmer, how the marketplace, the commercial interests work with you or try to cut you down. No one says much about that. But you're a man who speaks his mind, and I value that. I salute you for your openness and your honesty. So welcome to our show.
Well, thank you very much, Reverend.
So what interested you in farming in Vermont to begin with?
Well, my family had a farm,
okay,
for one thing.
So it was a dairy farm.
It was a dairy farm. We had about around 40, 45 Holsteins. And so I would be on the farm every summer and would learn to milk cows. I milked 12, 15 cows every night and morning.
No, this was not by hand.
By hand.
By hand.
By hand. We didn't have a milking machine then. This period of time in the beginning would be in the 30s during the Depression.
Did you have to wash your hands, or were there gloves you would wear?
No, we just barehanded.
Barehanded.
Yeah, yeah. And in the cold weather, of course, it was a kind of a comfort because the cow was warm. We'd sit on a stool and milk, and of course, her body was warm, and our hands would be warm, and of course, the barn would only be heat from the animals.
They produced a lot of heat.
Yes, yes, they would, and so that wasn't. But they of course, have to be milked twice a day. Every morning, we would be down in the barn by 5 o'clock.
5 a.m.
5 a.m. start milking, and milk the 40 cows. It would be usually myself and 2 others, and it would take probably 10 minutes per cow depending on some cows were harder to milk than others. We never could understand that, but some were. And on our farm, we didn't sell milk. We sold cream, and we had a separator, and we'd bring the milk in and pour it into the separator, and on 2 spouts on the machine, and one would come out cream and one would come out skim milk.
Mm.
And it was kind of interesting in that we fed the skim milk to our hogs, and now everybody drinks skim milk.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And the cream, of course, we'd just sell to the creamery. We'd save out some of the milk before separated for the house, and of course it was raw milk. Nobody ever thought of having it pasteurized, and I never could see as it made any difference as far as us drinking raw milk.
When I was a kid, as I told you, I grew up in the suburbs of New York City, up in Ossining, New York, and we had that well-known institution called Sing Sing there. But there was a lot of land around, and my parents liked fresh, locally grown and raised milk, and we used to go to the local farmer down the road about a mile and buy his raw milk, and it was delicious, and
yeah.
It tasted completely different than the milk we buy in the store.
And usually the Holsteins, the butterfat in the Holstein, which makes it taste good, is about 3.5% butterfat.
Mm-hmm.
For those who like a rich milk, they would have Jerseys, and they run around 6 or 6.5%.
So is that much difference from
that
one?
much difference.
One to the
Usually,
other?
Jerseys have high. Next would be Ashers, and then probably Brown Swiss. And but you're only paid for 3.5%, so there's no incentive to have cows bring in 6%.
Who pays you?
Yeah, when you sell your milk to the creamery, for example.
You don't sell it to the local supermarket?
No. It's all, as I said, this is in the 30s, and the milk was put in what we call 10-gallon cans, milk cans, And in our case, of course, we sold cream, so we would have only one can a day, 10 gallons. And
there were no supermarkets.
No,
were there?
no, there wasn't any. They were all neighborhood stores.
Yeah.
And the only thing that would be comparable in a one way to a supermarket was Kalani's Public Market in Burlington.
We know that name, Kalani.
Yeah, it's now the home for Burlington College on the corner of North Street and North Avenue.
Yeah.
And Alec Kalani ran a very, very fine store, and of course the groceries in those days was delivered. You could call up on the phone and put your order in, and then they'd bring it to your house. So you didn't have to, go to the store.
We think that we're fancy and really well thought out in our industry and in our groceries, but we're not. And I remember the same way when I was a boy. There was a Gristedes store in Austin, New York, and my mother would call up Gristedes and tell them what she wanted, and they would make they would take that shopping list, and they would themselves go up and down the aisles in the store and put together the shopping for my mother.
Exactly.
She didn't have to do it anymore.
Or on some of the neighborhood markets in Burlington back in the 40s and early 50s, you could call up and ask the man that ran the store, usually he owned it, he'd say, well, Bill, what's a good cut of meat today? And he'd tell you, and you'd get that cut, and then his delivery truck would bring it to the house. You'd have a charge account and pay once a month. And of course now it seems a little bit odd that you'll go to the supermarkets and there's maybe 1,000 people all there with their cars in this big parking lot, and the cars are dripping oil on the parking lot, and that's running into the lake.
You're right.
And
You're right.
In those days, we'd have just 1 or 2 trucks running around delivering, and they weren't dripping oil on anybody's parking lot. They didn't have to have it. So it has changed, and in some ways, I think we were better off.
Would they deliver groceries as well?
Yeah, oh yeah, all the groceries are, yeah.
Milk, meat, groceries?
Yeah, whatever you put on, you call up and say, I want, and then they would tell you what, if it's in the summer, what would be maybe a special on raspberries or strawberries or whatever.
For people who are ill or old,
very convenient.
Be very convenient.
Yes, yeah, and it costs, whether it was incorporated in the price of the
delivery
groceries, I don't know. I suppose it was. They still have to make a profit, but
it didn't seem to be excessive.
But it didn't seem. No, it didn't.
Well, this is a question I've often had about farming and cows. Why is their body so warm, and whereas horses don't have that kind of heat, do they?
Well, I don't know. We had 6 horses on our farm, and my job was to, when I got up in the morning, is go and clean the stable and and give them some hay, and then go down to the cow barn and start milking. And so I was right near the horses, and they seemed, warm to me. But
did they have blankets on them?
No.
But the cows didn't have blankets.
No. They never had any. No.
But you'd see cows out in a pasture when it was below freezing.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah.
And isn't there steam coming off of their bodies?
Yeah, it's I don't understand.
Not steam, but moisture.
Yes. No, it's.
Now, tell me, Bob, about what did the average farmer eat for breakfast?
Oh yeah.
That always intrigued me.
Yes, yeah. When you get up at 4:30, 4:45, and do maybe 1 or 2.5 hours of work, which is really work, you're ready for a good meal. So we would, of course, have, always had oatmeal, and then we would have, you know, like what they call home fries now, warmed up potato, which was fried in lard, and some kind of meat, beef or whatever. And we'd have, of course, toast, and we'd have donuts, and we'd have usually a piece of pie, and our, you know, and our coffee, and so we had a full meal that you'd think you'd have for dinner, actually. And because farming is certainly you walk, you know, it's just forever walking, and so you get tremendous exercise, and you get hungry, and
so you don't need to go to a health club.
No, you didn't really need a fitness center, and of course the farmers' wives, of course, they had to get up in the morning to make sure, because we had wood burning stove, and what we would do when we get up, we would start the stove so that when the women came to prepare breakfast, the stove would be good and warm, and because we had our own wood lot and burned our own wood, and so the stove would be nice and hot when they came to get the breakfast.
The stove wouldn't keep its heat over the night?
No, it was usually that I'm talking of the cook stove in the range in the kitchen.
Yeah.
But in the living room, we would have a heater. Ours was a Stewart, and the one in the kitchen was a Glenwood. And usually they have a reservoir on the end of the cook stove.
For water.
For the water, and I would fill that. Took the place of a hot water heater.
Ah, yes.
And then, of course, we'd have a wood box in some part of the kitchen, which was one of my jobs, was to bring the wood in and have it in the wood box. And then in the summer, we would split the wood and pile it in the barn for the coming winter. And
so how many cords would you have in the barn?
That's a good question. It would be a few, but I can't tell you exactly how many. But this is in the 1930s, and we didn't have running water. We had a well, which was really in our cellar, and the pump was in the kitchen, and we pumped the water from the well, and there was you didn't turn a faucet on. And the bathroom was out by the barn, and it was
a one-holer?
Yes, it was a two-holer, yeah, and so
they had a real cold draft in the wintertime.
Yes,
I remember.
Yes,
I never lived on a farm, but I spent some time on a farm.
Yeah, it's an
experience.
We finally came to the point where we put in a bathroom and had, like everybody else, running water and so on. But
I'm curious, Bob, why we're getting no phone calls yet? Our viewers, are you interested in this history of farming in Vermont? I'm intrigued with it personally, and I think it's a great history, and Bob knows about it personally, and I know about it from farming elsewhere, but I never was a farmer. I just would go and live on a farm for vacation, and that was my experience. But so I'm curious why some of you who are listening to the program aren't calling us, because you must have some specific questions of your own about farming, and what's this like, and why is that, and this is the man who can answer your questions. So it's a once in a lifetime for most of us to talk about this material. So just call our number, which is on the bottom of your TV screen, and we'll be talking with you. So, Bob, until the phone rings off the hook, did most young men want to become farmers?
I would say no. I think they'd, the fact that, you know, there's no vacation and it has to be done, as they say, a dairy farm. Now, if you had beef cattle, why, of course, you wouldn't have to, there wouldn't be any milking every day, so you'd have more time off. But with dairy farming, you have to be there 7 days a week. They have to be milked twice a day. And so I don't think, and of course, there wasn't hardly, you know, not a great deal of money in it. And so there wasn't much incentive to really be a farmer. And although some, I interviewed some at the farm show in Barrie a year or two ago, and I asked some of the young people why they wanted to be farmers, and they said, well, we like the freedom, we like being self-employed, and we love the fresh air, and we like, of course, they like animals as well. And I remember myself mowing on the meadow, and it's a great feeling, and the smell of the new mown hay is almost indescribable. How it's, to us as farm people, it really is a great smell to smell that hay.
I bet. But then you had to worry about it catching fire if it dried out too much in the barn?
Yes, yeah, we made sure that it didn't go in there unless it was, the sun had cured it to a point where it wouldn't have what they call spontaneous combustion.
Why would you have that problem?
I don't understand why that currently the moisture if there's too much moisture in the hay, and you confine it, apparently it'll heat up to the point where it will actually catch, and a lot of barns years ago were lost because of that. That they were trying to rush it, of getting the hay cut and in, and you have to be somewhat patient and let the hay after you cut it, you know, cure or dry a little.
And you're trying to get it in the barn before it
rains, yeah, and that's another thing you fight. And so, of course, as I say, in the 30s, they hadn't come out with a baler, and it was all loose hay.
Loose hay?
Yeah, we call loose. It wasn't baled. We would cut it, and then we'd have a rake called a side delivery rake, and and then we'd have a hay loader, which is now, they're hay antiques now, but the hay loader would, with a drum, and it would, almost like a portable conveyor belt, it would pick the hay up and go up the side and then drop it on the wagon, on the hay wagon. So it was loose hay, and then we would drive in the barn, and we call it, where you drop it down in, they call it a mow, and drop the hay down in there, and all by hand. And usually in the summer it's very hot.
Oh, I bet.
And and then when you get that chaff on when you're sweating, it gets to be a bit uncomfortable.
And itchy, probably.
Yeah, itchy is right. And of course now, even the hay bales, they still use some, but they're rolling it now. And the modern barns, they don't, they're totally different from, our barn was built in 1880, and so we drive up on it would really be the second floor, and the hay would be dropped in those mows. And the cows where they were milked were in stanchions on the first floor. Now the barns are open, and the cows can roam around in the barn, and they'll have a milking parlor, and the cows come into a parlor, and they are milked, of course, by machine, by milking machine, and so it's very different from what we did in the 30s of having them in a stanchion. And then we'd have a barnyard and have a trough out there where they'd go out and get their water and then bring them back in. So it's quite a different change from what it is today.
Sounds it. At one point in my life, I thought of raising chickens professionally. I never thought of raising cows or beef, but I did think of raising chickens. And I had, during World War II, my parents had 2 acres of land, and we had about 60 to 80 chickens, usually Rhode Island Reds or white Leghorns.
Yeah.
And a lot of the chicken meat would go to the troops, and there wasn't a lot left for people in the neighborhood. And so the butcher was very glad to get my chickens.
Oh, yeah.
We would get day-old chickens in the mail,
Yeah.
and then we would raise them. And I enjoyed that.
We always had, of course, we had chickens, probably, as you said, 3 dozen, and so we always had fresh eggs.
Mm-hmm.
There is probably a bit of a difference if you get an egg that's laid today as compared to laid 2 weeks ago, and so we had we raised our own potatoes, and we had a cellar which was, of course, unheated.
Mm-hmm.
And
you watered it unheated.
Dirt, yeah, and the potatoes would be stored down there. So, because on a farm, usually in those days, you ate a lot of potatoes. You had them for breakfast, and you had them for noon, and you had them for night.
But they didn't use sweet potatoes very much.
No,
I wondered why, because the sweet potatoes are more nutritious than white potatoes.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't recall hardly ever having sweet potato on the farm. It was always white potatoes, because that's what we raised, and we ate what we raised. And we had our own corn, fresh corn in the summer, and fresh tomatoes, and so in some ways you were quite self-sufficient, that you had your own milk and your own eggs and your own potatoes. And usually we, of course, as I said before, we raised hogs enough for us, and fed them the skim milk and cornmeal, and then we would butcher the hogs and have the hogs for bacon and pork chops and so on, and so it was, and of course on most farms they'd have a pantry, and they would buy a tub of lard and 100 pounds of sugar, and that would be a good start for put that in the fall for the winter. And because they always made their own bread. And,
really?
Yeah, it was great to smell. With yeast, the bread would have to rise, and put Fleischmann's yeast in, and that bread would rise with the heat, and have fresh bread, which was very nice.
It's obvious you loved those days.
Yes, it was. It was very nice. And now the farm is gone, and in fact, the whole street, every single farm is gone.
Why is that? Why do they gone away?
Apparently, they just couldn't make money, and they sell the land, and some of our land became a housing development.
Yeah.
And all new houses were built on the land, and so
that must be painful to you.
Yeah.
See land that you loved and you took care of.
Yeah.
To just become somebody's profit.
It's well, maybe it's just things evolve that way and change, and
well, we live on Spear Street, and when we came here at 71, there were 4 working farms on Spear Street where we lived.
Right.
And we enjoyed that. We knew the farmers, and once in a while the cows would get out and get on the road, and I would call the farmer up and let him know his cows were out, and he appreciated that. And
of course.
I wasn't annoyed that his cows were out on the road, and fortunately I never hit any of them with my car.
Yeah.
But you know, I had a feeling of comradeship, and I always liked farming. And I didn't want to become a farmer, but I respected their work and felt they were absolutely essential for our existence.
Is for the country to have food, of course.
Yeah.
Well, when you talked about cows on the road, our cows' pasture was on one side of the road, and our barns and other was on the other side.
Sure.
And of course, we'd have to, 4:30 in the afternoon, the cows would be down to get in the barn to milk. And of course, they'd be crossing the road, and the motorists would get real irritated because they had to wait a few minutes for those cows to get across the road. And I thought, how impatient can you get? And I like to tell a story about having patience. And we had, as I said, we had 6 horses, and one of them was old Ben, and he was over 30. We never killed our horses. We let them die of a natural death and bury them on the farm. So I had a buggy, and I'd hitch Ben to the buggy, and I'd go to the general store, which was about 2 miles away, and pick up some chicken feed for the chickens, 100-pound bag, and maybe some other little item. And I'd have the paper with me, and Ben would get tired, and so he would lie down in the road and rest a while. I'd read the paper, and now I go over that same road, and there, of course, it's all blacktop. In those days, it was a dirt road and covered bridge, go through the covered bridge, and Ben by then would get kind of tired, so he would rest, and I'd let him rest. Then I'd read the paper while he was resting, and then he'd get up, and we'd go on to the store. And now the cars go through there, 50, 60 miles an hour. And I thought, what a difference in time, how people seem to be so impatient now. Everything has got to be very, very fast. We have to have drive-through restaurants so you can eat your meal in so many minutes. And I don't quite understand that, but in those days, we didn't seem to be in a hurry. And certainly Ben was no hurry, and I'd let him rest and go on to the store and come back. And so it shows how how everything has changed. And now, of course, it's hard to find a dirt road now.
Yeah, our local road used to be a dirt road.
Yes, right.
About maybe 6, 8 years ago, they paved it. And they claimed it was for our own good, but I don't think so.
But the speed, everything speeds up.
We had built-in speed bumps. We had.
You had to slow them down.
Yeah. No, I mean we had that God provided on our dirt road.
Yeah. Well, you'd have pothole, especially. And then, of course, in those days, the road commissioner, they called him road commissioner, and he'd have a scraper.
Yeah, that would take care of it.
Yeah, and they would scrape the road, and it'd smooth it right out. It's really quite pleasant to drive on a nice dirt road, actually. But it's harder and harder to find them now. But so the time in the country is very different now from back in the 30s and 40s.
You never sold directly to the market or to people?
No, we just sold cream to the creamery. And I don't recall who owned the cream. Some of them were cooperative, like the one in St. Albans is the St. Albans Cooperative. But as I said, we didn't sell milk; we sold cream, and and the creamery was nearby, and so we didn't have to, I think it was maybe a mile away, so it was very convenient. And, but
do you remember a lot of your food going to support the World War II, our troops?
Do I
remember that there were some ways to manage selling food to the Army or Navy?
From our, you mean
from your milk or?
We just sold, as I say, we just sold the cream. We didn't sell any vegetables or any. That was all, and of course we sold syrup every spring, and they have most of the farmers. A lot of them would figure that the syrup that they would sell would help pay for their real estate tax.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and they planned on that. And
well, I know I was going to ask about the farmers market. That's a popular thing these days.
Yeah, it wasn't then. There wasn't any. I don't know of any in those days of any farmers market. I don't. At least in this area, I never saw any. And
did anyone come down with undulant fever from milk that wasn't pasteurized?
Not my time. The only thing that could be a problem sometimes was what they call mastitis, which the cow would have, and you usually have the veterinarian, and he would take care of it for you. But it was quite uncommon that would happen.
So there were no scary illnesses that you
No, I don't recall of any. No, wait a minute. No, there was a time when they were worried about TB in cows. And I don't know how they solved that, but apparently they did, because you never hear of it now. And,
I know I wanted to ask you about the boyhood memory. In the morning, we had milk delivered in glass bottles to outside our door.
Right.
And when the weather got cold, you would sometimes have the milk freeze, and it would push the cream up, and you'd get maybe about 2 inches sticking out the top of the bottle.
Yeah, it was a paper cap.
Yeah.
I delivered milk one summer, and I was going to school, and I went to work at around midnight, and we deliver all night.
Wow.
And it was L.E. Brigham's dairy, and we, as you said, it was glass bottles, and there were several milk companies in the Burlington area. One was White's Dairy, and Collins Dairy, and Brigham's Dairy, and D.J. Barrett's Dairy. So you can see there was a lot of competition. And then there was, at one point, the story came out in the paper how they never proved anything, but one of them was going around and trashing the other guy's milk.
Oh, my.
So that didn't happen very long, but it was that fierce a competition. And of course, it was delivered to your house, a quart of milk for 10 cents.
10 cents?
10 cents, yeah. And so it was quite a, now we're paying $4 for a gallon of milk now, $3.95 or something like that.
And why is it that it seems, at least I've never studied this, so it's just more like It's not a scientific statement, but it seems that when there's the wholesalers, they can get a big increase in the cost of milk, but it's never given
down to the farmer.
To the farmer who's actually gotten the milk.
Yeah, it's always been that problem.
Why is that?
I don't know. They don't seem to have ever solved it. I don't know why that is. That they just, as you just said, they dictate and get this big price. A farmer, as I said, way back in the 30s, it was 50 cents a hundred. It was so bad in the 30s then that they showed pictures in the papers of the farmers would take the milk cans and dump the milk on the road.
Yeah, I've heard of that.
Rather than sell it for 50 cents. They just were disgusted. And but so it's always been a problem for the farmer to get a good price. I think now they're probably doing quite well in getting a decent price too.
Oh, I'm glad of that.
Yeah, and but as I said, I couldn't get over it when I stopped in this restaurant in New York City, and this is several years ago. It's probably a lot different now, but 75 cents for an 8-ounce glass of milk, and as I said, I remember we were selling it for 50 cents for like 40 quarts. So it was such a discrepancy that it just was hard to understand. But, right.
Did you find it hard to give up farming?
No. The only way I'd like, if I was at all interested, would be to be able to have someone else do all the work. And just visit the farm and say you're doing a nice job. And if I wanted to get on the tractor, which I used to enjoy, I remember when we got our first tractor in 1951, and we always had horses, and so I used to do that on weekends and come up on the. I left the farm then, and the farm was still in our family, but I wasn't there anymore, and so I would mow on a weekend, and I loved it. It was fun.
A gentleman's farm.
Yeah, yes, that's that.
Isn't that the
I
term?
think that's. I think Mr. Bostwick had it right when he had his farm in Shelburne, that he could come and visit and see it,
and then leave,
and leave when he felt like it, but no, I wouldn't. It's amazing how young people still want to farm, and they know all the problems and the long hours and not much for reward.
Well, as you and I said before the program began today, if you're a farmer, you have to be a bit of a gambler.
Yeah.
Because there's so many things that can go wrong.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's the weather can really, and as we said, whether it's dairy or apple orchard, some quirk can come along and change the whole procedure. Either the apples fall on the ground prematurely, or the frost does something, and there's the whole year's, and they've spent money for a lot of care with apples, of spraying and pruning, and it's not just looking at them and seeing them ripen, and so it's and then you have to have somebody to come and pick them, and they've been, I guess, very faithful, those people that come from out of the country.
Yeah, we have migrant workers.
Yes, they come, and
they come, I think, particularly from
the Caribbean usually, and they are very, very good. The farmers will say that, or the apple orchard people will say that they're much better than locals. So locals, even it sounds a little funny that you wouldn't know how to pick an apple, but apparently these people know how to do it and not harm the apple or the tree or anything else.
Kind of twist it.
And they know how to do it, and they these people depend on them for every year, and I guess some of them come back year after year to the same. So it helps them, and it helps the orchard man. And,
oh, you told me something about the hired man. You want to tell our viewers about the hired man?
Yeah. Yes. We had a hired man, and he never married. I don't know where his family ever was, but he had a problem about drinking, and he would, maybe on a Saturday night, he wouldn't get back until late Monday, maybe. But they were. I think Robert Frost talked about it in one of his poems, and it was interesting that they were people like that seemed to live by themselves. And of course, we had a place where he had his own. He slept in our house, had his own bedroom, and of course, he got his food and laundry, and so. I'm thinking how it was. He loved to smoke, and he smoked Bull Durham, which tobacco comes in a little cloth bag, and then you buy the cigarette papers. Mm-hmm. And I was amazed that he could drive a team and horses and take that tobacco out of that cloth bag and put it in that paper wrapper and
roll
his own right there. It was amazing.
As he drove the horses?
Yeah, and he drove the horses up. Usually, we would have, it was usually on the manure spreader, and we'd go out on the meadows and with a horse-drawn manure spreader. And
I can't remember for sure, but I think the price of a good tractor now for a farmer is around $100,000.
Yes, yes. Yeah, I don't know how they.
How can anyone afford it?
I don't see how they afford to buy them. I learned that when I went to the Berry Farm Show.
I just can't believe it. You know, yeah. I mean, you and I, we don't buy a $100,000 passenger car.
Oh gosh, no.
And here, for the tractor.
Yeah. Oh, they. Yeah. I just couldn't figure. I don't know how they do it. Yeah. You know, it's and they have to have them.
Yeah.
There's no way of other than
necessity.
They have. It's a total necessity is right. But
there's a bit of American history well, there's a lot of American history in what we're talking about, but there's a musical piece called the Plow That Broke the Plain.
Oh.
Do you know it at all?
No,
Because they originally, when the plow that was pulled by a horse, you'd have to keep cleaning the blade of the plow.
Right.
It would clog up with dirt and soil and stuff, and you couldn't just go charging down the earth. And then along came John Deere.
John Deere, yeah.
And he came up with a plow that was stainless steel, I guess.
Yes, yeah.
And the plow would just shed the.
And it was the shape of the metal plow that
clean itself.
Yeah, it was self-cleaning. Yeah, you have you're very right on that.
And if you didn't have that, we couldn't have.
No.
We couldn't have developed the Great Plains the way we did.
Where they raised, thousands of acres of crop. Yeah, he came from. I think he was from Middlebury. John Deere.
Really?
Yeah.
Famous person.
Yeah. He, their ad, nothing runs like a deer, and
they still use that ad?
Yeah.
Well, his company is a part of American history.
Yes, yeah. And then the other one would be McCormick.
Yeah.
And
Reaper.
Yeah, and we used to raise oats for our horses. and of course they would have to have a reaper to cut them, and usually when on the grains, most of the farms in those days, a man that owned the thresher would come through, and he'd hit each farm.
Oh,
and then we would all take our wagons and work for so-and-so while they were threshing there. And then they would come and work on our farm. And they would do that in the fall when we were cutting corn. We'd cut the corn and put it in a machine called made it in the corn cutter, into ensilage. Mm-hmm. And they would blow it up into the silos.
Okay.
But I guess they don't, I don't believe they're doing that now. I haven't noticed recently, but I think that's out now. Mm. But it was interesting how everybody cooperated. And there was no money in exchange. We just, so-and-so's farm was having the thresher while we'd be down with our horses and wagons and men.
They were too expensive for each
farm. For each one to hire it. And so, and it wouldn't pay to own a threshing machine. But you're only using it just a short few days out of the year. And so we would raise our own oats and have the oats for our horses, and along with our own hay. And of course now what hurts a lot of farmers, if they don't get a good hay crop and they have to buy hay, it makes it a lot more expensive. And
now, is it true that a horse is almost like a human being, that a horse knows the way to the home, to the farm, and at the end of the day you can just tell the horse?
Yeah, they seem to. I remember when we were sugaring and we had the horse pull the gathering tank instead of a tractor. And in the sugar bush, of course, there's holes and logs and dead stuff and rocks and whatever. So it's very hard for the tractor on wheels to maneuver that terrain. Whereas the horses, of course, they can pick their way and pick their feet up. And we would, one of ours was Prince and Pete, and we'd holler, "Prince, come on over here." And we would be gathering sap from this tree, and then when we got through, then he'd follow us. We didn't have to get on the rig to drive him. And so it was kind of convenient in that
he would just follow.
Yeah, he would. Whereas if the tractor was there, someone had to get up on the tractor and move it. And with the horse-drawn gathering tank, we didn't have to do that. And so in some ways, there are some of those things I think were more convenient than they are now. And but we used to boil. We had a lot of sap, and you can't store it very long, and because it will go sour, and so we'd boil all night, and we'd usually have a lunch. We'd have fresh eggs and boil the eggs in the sap, and have them for maybe midnight or whatever we were boiling, and so it was that was kind of an interesting experience.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
Yeah. No.
Yeah, it's a whole way of life that.
It's all gone now. Yes. And yeah.
So how do we sum up farming here in 5 minutes? Well, everything that we've been talking about. What do you want to stress, Bob, about?
Well,
our conversation.
That's a good. I got to think.
It's all right. It's our time. What do you want to?
Well, I think that that us that have lived through it, it's we kind of miss the slower pace of living. I think in some ways it was a life which would be less stressful than we live today.
Absolutely, I'm sure of that.
we all have all these deadlines now that we have to meet, and I think that's what causes people with stress. And as I saw on the television that if you have a continuous stress, it certainly will cause eventually heart attacks from stress, along with other things too, of course,
Sure,
diet and
sure.
so on. But so if you could live with a less stressful life, it's probably happier and a better way to live. I think that type of living is not around anymore. I think there's.
How was it for women? With the women's role?
They certainly worked hard. The women, I have to, they were there getting those breakfasts and full meals there every morning. Of course, they were wood-burning stoves, and they had to, keep putting the wood to the stove. And they had to, when they baked, they had to make sure that they anticipated a time of heating that oven up to where it would belong before they could do any baking. And of course, it's not like with gas or electric where you just turn a knob and set it. And it was more physical work too. I think the women did. They certainly put in hours. And in the summer, instead of having a hot wood-burning stove in the kitchen, which would make it very uncomfortable, we'd have a oil stove, which would burn kerosene with a wick, and that way they could get the meals done without starting up the wood-burning stove. And then when summer was over, of course, they go back to wood again. But no, they really worked hard, and of course, until they they did all the laundry, and usually they had a Maytag. And
Really?
Yeah, they painted gray, I remember. And before the Maytag, I remember they would have to have a scrub board.
Yeah.
And right, and do it by hand. So.
What did the Maytag do? It was an agitator?
It was an agitator, yes. It was a top-loading machine.
All the other...
And they had my mother had an Easy, which had 3 or 4 cups, and they would go up and down and pound the laundry. And then they would move one way, and then they'd move another way, so they weren't going in the same spot every time. And they made quite a lot of noise, and I think in those days, most of the laundry was done on a Monday morning. I don't know why that was the case, but
there was a song about
Monday morning.
I think
the women would do their washing
on Mondays.
And of course, they hanged it out on the line.
Yeah,
they didn't have any dryers, and so in a lot of ways, we were not polluting so much as we do now. Of course, now we use electricity for, doing. They didn't have dishwashers. Everything was washed by hand.
Sure.
So they did a lot of work that women now don't have to do.
I don't think that's fully appreciated. Bob, Bob, it's been great to have you here, and I'm sure I'll get feedback from a lot of people about the program. I wish they would phone in and let you talk with them. I think it's a lot more fun, but they're shy.
Yes.
And they don't. Well, thank you again.
Well, thank you for having me.
Really looking forward to
yes
our other show we're going to do together. But I wanted to start out with this. I thought this was excellent.
Fine.
Thank you.
Yes.
I think it's unique to have someone talk this way.
I enjoyed it.